Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel where I'll be revising Q history. Right, remember in the previous lesson of the French Revolution, we're talking about the causes and the formation of the National Assembly. Now we want to look at the first reform of the National Assembly. Right, the National Assembly declared the Declaration of the Rights of Man. The declaration was drafted by the Absies and the Marquis de Lafayette in consultation with Thomas Jefferson. It was issued on 26 August 1789 by the French National Constituent Assembly. The declaration defined individual and collective rights at the time of the revolution. The constituent principle was men are born and remain free and equal in rights, and the rights of men were natural, universal, and inalienable. The declaration subordinated the monarch to the rule of law. The declaration proclaimed basic rights of human beings and the limits of the government. Rights given by the declaration. So, we are saying that the Declaration of the Rights of Men was drafted by the Absies in consultation with Marquis de Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. Let's look at the rights. Number 1, no person shall be accused, arrested, or imprisoned except in those cases established by the law. 2, rights of liberty and private property. 3, rights to the inviolability of the person and resistance to oppression. 4, freedom of religion. 5, freedom of speech. 6, freedom of assembly and separation of powers. Note that the declaration did not lead to the recognition of gender equality and children's rights. The declaration also had American ideas of Rousseau. The declaration also made the royal family to be governed by the laws. It was when it came to power of the king's position in the constitution that's when serious trouble began. Some of the nobility demanded the king have the right to veto laws. Other members wanted the veto to be a 6-year veto only. This meant the king had the power of delaying the passing of a law for 6 years, but no longer. The popular orators outside the assembly and a number of deputies within denounced the king's veto power, whatever the case. Right. Then there was a women's march on Versailles, which was a turning point in the French Revolution. Let's look at the march to Versailles. The Women's March on Versailles in October 1789 is often credited with forcing the royal court and family to move from the traditional seat of government in Versailles to Paris, a major and early turning point in the French Revolution. In May of 1789, the Eastern General began to consider reforms, and in July, the Bastille was formed. Remember, the Bastille was a notorious prison, a symbol of tyranny where individuals sentenced with the literary cachet were put in. So, the Bastille was stormed by the people. A month later, in August, feudalism and the privileges of the nobility and royalty were abolished with the Declaration of the Rights of Men and of the Citizen, modeled on America's Declaration of Independence, and seen as a precursor to forming a new constitution. It was clear that a major upheaval was underway in France. In some ways, this meant that hopes were high among the French for a successful change in government, but there was a reason for despair or fear as well. Calls for more radical action were increasing, and many nobles and those who were not French nationals left France fearing for their fortunes or even their lives. Because of poor harvests for several years, grain was scarce, and the price of bread in Paris had increased beyond the ability of many of the poor residents to buy it. Sellers also were anxious about the shrinking market for their goods. Their uncertainties added to general anxiety. Now, the crowd assembled. This combination of a bread shortage and high prices angered many French women who relied on bread sales to make a living. On October 5, one young woman began beating a drum at the market in eastern Paris. More and more women began to gather around her, and before long, a group of them was marching through Paris, gathering a larger crowd as they stormed through the streets. Initially demanding bread, they began possibly with the involvement of radicals who had joined in the march to demand arms as well. By the time the marchers arrived at the city wall in Paris, they numbered somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000. They were armed with kitchen knives and many other simple weapons, with some carrying muskets and swords. They seized more weapons at city wall and also seized the food that they could find there. But they were not satisfied with the food for the day. They wanted the situation of food scarcity to end. Now, there was an attempt to calm the march. Stanislas Marie Maillard, who had been a captain in National Guardsmen and helped attack the Bastille in July, had joined the crowd. He was known as the leader among the market women and is credited with discouraging marchers from burning down the city wall or any other buildings. The Marquis de Lafayette, meanwhile, was trying to assemble the National Guardsmen who were sympathetic to the marchers. He led some 15,000 troops and a few thousand civilians to Versailles to help guide and protect the women marchers, and he hoped to keep the crowd from turning into an uncontrollable mob. Then let's look at the march to Versailles. A new goal began to form among marchers to bring the King Louis XVI back to Paris, where he would be responsible to the people and to the reforms that had begun to be passed earlier. Thus they would march to the palace of Versailles and demand that the king respond. When the marchers realized Versailles after a walk in driving rain, they experienced confusion. Lafayette and Maillard convinced the king to announce his support for the declaration, and August changes passed in the assembly. But the crowd returned to Paris, but most remained in Versailles. Early the next morning, a small group invaded the palace attempting to find the queen's rooms. At least 2 guards were killed. Their heads were raised on pikes before the fighting in the palace calmed. Alright, now let's listen at the king's promises. When the king was finally convinced by Lafayette to appear before the crowd, he was surprised to be greeted by the traditional "Vive la Roi." Right, "Vive la Roi" just means "Long live the Queen, long live the king." The crowd then called for the queen, who emerged with 2 of her children, to be removed, and there was fear that the crowd intended to kill the queen. The queen stayed present, and the crowd was apparently moved by her courage and calm. Some even chanted "Vive la Reine," which means "Long live the Queen." Then with the return to Paris, the crowd now numbered about 60,000, and they accompanied the royal family back to Paris, where the king and queen and their court took up residence at the Tuileries Palace. They ended the march on October 7. 2 weeks later, the National Assembly also moved to Paris. Now let's look at the significance of the march. The march became a rallying point through the next stages of the revolution. Lafayette eventually attempted to leave France, as many thought he had been too soft on the royal family. He was imprisoned and only released by Napoleon in 1797. Maillard remained a hero, but he died in 1794 at the age of 31. The marchers' success in forcing the king to move to Paris and support the reforms was a major turning point in the French Revolution. Their invasion of the palace removed all doubt that the monarch was subject to the will of the people and was the major defeat for France's ancient regime of hereditary monarchy. The women who initiated the march were heroines, they were quoted mothers of the nation. The despair of the market women was the original impetus for the march. But what started as a church for bread soon took a much more ambitious goal. Right, guys, that was it, the lesson for today. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to look at the civil constitution of the Clergy, another reform which was drawn up by the National Assembly. So, remember to subscribe, add a comment and add a like. We'll meet in the next lesson. Bye guys.